Welcome to John's Tarot. The name of this episode, When the Work Begins to Change You. If you've been following this work for a while now, especially if you've been with me through the earlier episodes, you may be noticing that something is changing. Not dramatically, not in a way that's easy to point to, but quietly. This episode isn't part of the formal series. It's not a teaching episode. It's more of a reflection, an acknowledgement of what sometimes begins to happen as the work starts to take root. If nothing I say resonates, that's fine. And if some of it does, there's nothing you need to do with it. Just listen. One of the first things people often notice is a change in how they relate to the world emotionally. Not less feeling, but less entanglement. Public debate spaces today are largely persona-driven, dopamine-reinforced, identity-defensive. They reward reaction, not transformation. Online debate is a low-yield arena for individuated people. Once somebody begins operating from the self rather than the persona, those spaces start to feel noisy, draining, and strangely irrelevant. That's not disengagement. It's discernment. You may still care deeply about what's happening around you, but the constant pull to react, comment, argue, or defend begins to soften. You might notice less interest in online debates, less patience for comment sections, less emotional charge around the news cycle. At first, this can feel strange. Some people worry they're becoming apathetic. Others worry they're checking out. But what's often happening isn't withdrawal. It's reorganization. Your energy is starting to move differently. Differentiation versus disengagement. There's an important distinction here. Apathy is a collapse. Avoidance is fear. Withdrawal is often defensive. What I'm talking about is differentiation. Differentiation is when your psyche begins to say, not everything needs my nervous system. You still see, you still care, but you no longer feel responsible for carrying the emotional weight of the collective. That's not moral superiority. It's psychological maturation. The psyche begins to learn boundaries. Daily, I say the Serenity Prayer, and I notice these things when I say the prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. I really feel I cannot change, say, the administration. It's just beyond me. The courage to change the things I can. So I am doing John's Tarot. That is something I can do. And the wisdom to know the difference, to differentiate what is my responsibility and what is not my responsibility. I want to speak personally for a moment. One of the things I noticed in myself was a loss of appetite for online banter, especially political or ideological spaces. Sometimes I still want to get in there and mix it up, but really with much less frequency now. Not because I suddenly had all the answers, not because I stopped caring, but because I could feel very clearly that those spaces were pulling me out of myself. I noticed how emotionally fussed I had been with the events of the day, how quickly my inner state could be hijacked by headlines, arguments, or outrage. And slowly, without effort, something loosened. I didn't make a decision to disengage. I simply stopped being pulled. That was somewhat surprising and honestly relieving. The nervous system has learned this work isn't just psychological, it's physiological. When you stay chronically activated, angry, outraged, defensive, your nervous system stays in that state of readiness. What individuation often does is teach the nervous system you don't have to stay on high alert all the time. You may notice less urgency to respond, more tolerance for uncertainty, more capacity to sit with not knowing. This can feel disorienting at first, especially if your identity was once tied to being informed, engaged, or opinionated. Another common experience is a series of standing slightly apart from the crowd, not above it, not against it, just adjacent. I notice that a lot with myself at work. You may feel a quiet loneliness here, and that's normal. Individuation often creates a temporary sense of distance, not because you're leaving humanity, but because you no longer fully merge with it. You're becoming a person in the world rather than a reaction to it. At this stage, disengagement happens. Something else often emerges: energy. Not frantic energy, not performative energy, but available energy. Energy that wants to go somewhere meaningful. For me, that energy began to move into this work, into John's tarot, into quieter, deeper conversations. Not mass persuasions, not winning arguments, contribution. And that distinction matters. If you're noticing changes like these in yourself, there's nothing to fix. You don't need to push them away, and you don't need to lean into them. Just notice. Notice where your energy is no longer available. I like to do a little 3-card reading to wrap this up for this Tuesday morning. It's usually like 5:30 in the morning here in beautiful Southern California. I'm going to throw 3 cards. What can we expect as a result of the work done so far? I'll throw 3 cards. I might even throw some runes on it. I often do that. What can we expect as a result of the work done so far? What might a person experience? Past, present, future. 3 cards. And just cut the deck. And my first card, the Hangman. The second card, the Tower. These cards are appropriate from a question I just asked. And the third card, the Lovers. Well, I could throw some runes on there. I often do that. I also read Nordic runes. Let me throw some runes on there. Odin, for you, please help guide this reading. For the Hangman, the Tower, and the Lovers. For the Hangman, the rune is called Perthel. An appropriate rune. For the Tower, the rune is called Feyu. And for the Lover card, the rune is called Arthelia. So the Hangman, past, present, and future, kind of talks about where many of us were before we got involved with this work. Kind of hanging in between heaven and earth, kind of suspended, kind of a work incomplete. It's also a card of making sacrifice. Odin made the sacrifice of hanging from the tree of knowledge for like 3 days before he received the blessing of the runes. So we've been suspended and unable to, and suspended between 2 worlds, between the conscious and the unconscious. And then the rune Pertho has to do with in the past, taking a chance, a gaming cup. Also has to do with the flight of the phoenix, soaring above the situation, soaring above the experience in order to take a look at it and examine it. Where are we now? Where might we be now as a result of the work we've done? The Tower. The Tower is it's a collapse. Maybe for some of you, it is a collapse of your old thoughts, your old ideas, your old way of looking at things, your old sense of identity you found that's no longer working for you. And it sometimes happens suddenly. You'll see a streak of lightning in the Tower because it was based on unsound ground. As I talked about in this podcast, the emerging consciousness, the emerging collective consciousness is just obsolete, is superior to the old paradigm. The old paradigm is built on unfirm ground, and the new consciousness, that is coming in will be built on a solid foundation. And then the rune Feo has to do with wealth, movable wealth that you could take with you. So in terms of what it's talking about here, the old consciousness is collapsing. A new one will emerge. And not everybody is on board with this. And it's a wealth that you're going to be able to take with you into your work, into your family life, into your personal relationships, and into your life. And then the final card, the Lovers. That is a card where you see a man and a woman standing between, I think it's Saint Michael or the Archangel, and it has to do with getting messages in this context. What might you expect in the future now, the Lovers? That you're going to get more messages from the superconsciousness. The man is the consciousness, the woman is the subconsciousness, and St. Michael is the superconsciousness or the universe. And the superconsciousness reports to the subconscious, the woman, and she then reports that information to the conscious. And that's what you might expect in the future as a result of doing this work, is a new level of consciousness, is what it's saying. And then the final on the rune, Orthelia, has to do with inheritance, sometimes dropping an old skin and able to peeling away, dropping the old skin so that a new one may form. And actually, inheritance also in terms of our inheritance as human beings. You're an inheritance of this higher level of consciousness. And that's what I'm talking about with this whole podcast. So I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. And have a good day today. And I will see you on Friday. I'm just getting ready to wrap up the podcast. What am I going to wrap it up with this Friday? I'm going to talk about... it'll be the end of phase 3. I'm going to talk about inner opposites, anima and animus. And then we'll get into phase 3, spiritual transformations, where I'm going to talk about synchronicities, death and rebirth. And then the final phase, phase 4, will be about embodiment and service, living from the self and the full returns, awakening the sacred beginner. So I got some episodes to go. If I am not with this podcast, I am not paying Facebook to promote this podcast. You who are listening are the lucky few, are receiving information that is going to benefit you. If you think this information would benefit somebody else, definitely refer them to the podcast so they can listen. You are on the cutting edge of this new emerging collective consciousness, and it's going to be up to you to spread it forward. So until Friday, be careful, be cool, be kind. Remember, have courage, find faith, and I will talk to you all on Friday. Okay, have a great week. Bye-bye.